There are currently, at the time of recording, only 2 teams that are unbeaten in the Premier League this season. Arsenal being one of them. We might have expected that one. Tottenham Hotspur from nowhere. The Ange loving is real. Kweku, myself and you, we backed him. We backed Big Ange, didn't we? No one believed in us. But now everyone's loving them. Harry, do you love Ange?
It's really difficult for me to love a Tottenham manager, but I think he's been a breath of fresh air. I think he's brought a feel-good factor to the club, which goes a long way. I remember a time supporting my club when Unai Emery was in charge where you felt a little bit disconnected, didn't really quite understand what the plan was because it would change from week to week, and you can get into this state of almost apathy. And I think Tottenham fans were getting there after having Mourinho and then Conte and not enjoying the style of football. Now they're in a place where they're turning up every week knowing that they're going to be entertained, and when you're getting the results as well, what's not to love? I think he's done a wonderful job of breathing life back into that football club. I think, I'm not going to say they're going to flatline, but I think it will even out a little bit.
Peter out.
Yeah, peter out is a better way of putting it.
I mean, the one thing I would say with that, and I think that's a fair consensus that you would expect for it to occur at some point. But the attitude change of that as a club, in terms of like the breath of fresh air around it, you know, the things you're seeing on Twitter, that the atmosphere at the stadium of what it was and where it is now, that attacking attitude that Postecoglou's brought in, it's incredible the wholesale change that's provided to a group of players that the bulk of them were there last year.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting you talk about apathy there. It's philosophy and identity when it comes to Spurs, and you see it with the biggest clubs in this country. There's a way of winning, and there's a way you have to try and win. And you see it. Liverpool have that, Spurs have that, Manchester United and Arsenal have that. And for Spurs, despite the fact that they thought that they wanted just to win and try and win trophies, what Spurs actually identify with is good football. And Ange has brought that. They play progressive football. What I really like about Ange is that we sit here and we try and work out asymmetric formations and what player drops into where. Despite the fact that they are very dynamic, it's pretty simplistic in terms of the way he plays. He's got his fullbacks who underlap and overlap in the Dogi and Porro, who've been great this season. I think a lot of their attacking output has come from those players willing to make runs forward and also great defensively. And then you've got the midfield duo of Sarr and Bissouma, which is a great blocker for their back four, and it provides that stability and it allows their attacking players to be very effective going forward. And then you've got James Maddison, who's been one of the best players this season. He's a great son, and again, he just fits with that Spurs identity. When you think about Glenn Hoddle or you think about Van der Vaart, he fits that kind of mold, a player that is a bit of a maverick and is allowed to go and create in spaces that he wants to be most effective in. And it's just come together in a beautiful melting pot. And Spurs have looked really, really good this season as a result of Ange basically taking the handbrakes off of this side.
Yeah, let's have a look at the sort of chance creation numbers, because per 90, Tottenham sort of lead the way in the Premier League. Again, an astounding stat to see, really, for where they were. Because we've just done a video talking about who are the runners and riders for the league, or the biggest challenges to Man City. And we were talking about XG and sort of running hot with it. Thank goodness for that last season, because Harry Kane was sort of on a one-man mission just to take every chance he had. And if he hadn't been in the team, it could have got really ugly for Tottenham last year. This year, in terms of chance creation per 90, shot creating actions per 90, 34.86. That's unbelievable. Man City are averaging 33.86, so more than Man City. Last season, they only averaged 23.95. So we can touch on the defensive side a little bit, because I think there's one player in particular who provides an element of control, but even he is actually being an attacking outlet as well. Let's talk about James Maddison and Heung-min Son in terms of those two players who played a big part in that Arsenal game. Maddison sort of making the move to allow Heung-min Son to get in the game, for both goals, really. He's averaging 3.18 key passes per 90. He's putting 4 passes into the penalty area. I think he is the symbol of it for Tottenham, because he has such freedom, doesn't he? Oh, God, my phone nearly went, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take any credit away from Ange Postecoglou, right? But I do feel like it isn't as deep as people have made it out to be. I know this is going to come across as Arsenal fan, doesn't want to give them any credit. But I actually think it's been as simple as taking the shackles off of some really talented footballers. Bringing one in James Maddison, who's got that freedom and that ability to go left,
and that
right.
personality, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He is that guy. He was that guy regardless of what team he was going to play for. So he has been an unbelievably perfect fit for Tottenham, right?
Yeah, he's taken away that kind of regimented style that had creeped in at the club over the years. And the signing of James Maddison is a prime example of how they've shifted away from that and how they're moving towards something different. Son, we know what a talented attacker he is. We know that if he's got someone in and around him that can supply like Maddison can, he will score goals. People wondered how he would fare after Harry Kane's departure, but he's found someone in Maddison who won't score as many goals as Kane, but will certainly provide as many and help you in terms of the build-up. So, yeah, I think he's just been really, really good at taking the shackles off of people. And Maddison is the creative midfield player that Spurs have been crying out for years. But under Mourinho, under Conte, it was, well, let's play a Højbjerg instead and be that little bit more stable. They never replaced Christian Eriksen for a long, long time. In Maddison, they've done that, and they've maybe brought in a better version, you could argue.
Brennan Johnson's come in right at the end of the deadline. You've got Richarlison, who started through the middle, struggled, can play out wide as well. Kulusevski's been great at times and, again, provides a lot of energy for this team. But in Heung-min Son, in terms of that move from out wide to a central striker, his conversion rate's 30% at the moment, which is astounding. But I mean, he has actually always been such a brilliant technical footballer. Do you think he's found a new home there?
100%. I think that's just where, I said it in one of our previous videos, I look at Son and physically he's not where he was 2 seasons ago.
Not the same zip, is there?
No, there's just something missing. But obviously as you get older, you gain that game intelligence and you can see that he's got that. He's a leader, he's got the armband now. And he's really embracing that at Spurs. It's his side. Obviously it's by committee at Spurs and it hasn't got the looming shadow of Harry Kane there. But Son's the main man. And he's really embracing that. And I think the issue for Spurs is we don't really trust Richarlison to bag your goals. So if Son does go down injured, like you said, there's not that depth there at Spurs. And you look at some of the players that come off the bench, the players they were trying to ship in the summer. If you look at Højbjerg, if you look at Skip, there's players, Ben Davis, there are players that were surplus to requirements that are coming off the bench and playing significant minutes for Spurs. So when they do start to get injuries, because they are inevitable, then we'll see where Spurs are really at. But you can't say anything bad about what Big Ange has done since coming in at Spurs. Actually, there's one player that I do want to highlight, Mickey van der Ven. I really, really like him. Obviously a lot was made about his speed, but he's a player. He can play. Yeah. And I think he calms Romero down as well. I think that's necessary. You've got that yin and you've got that yang. And I think that when the Spurs side eventually do get to where Ange wants to take them, you're going to lose a lot of these players. You're going to lose maybe a Kulusevski, who I think is great, but when they get to where they want to get to, he might not be there anymore. I think with Van der Ven and Romero, you've got a centre-back partnership that will be there for a long time.
Going the other way, and I guess it's to a point, I'm sort of crowbarring it to talk about a defensive side of it, but again, what Tottenham have been has not been that. And coming back to the point right at the start about, some teams have a winning DNA, that, without trying to be a dig about Spurs, that's not what Spurs are about. So, and they thought that, okay, if we just get the right guys, then we'll fix that problem and then we're a winning team. But actually, it's more about how they play, because that can be enough for certain clubs. And I think Spurs are in that bracket. One player I think he's world class. I really, really do. I think Bissouma is an utter joke. To play in the position that he plays in, I think we're going to see more and more players like him, because I think you can be, and we've done it on a podcast where we're speaking about how that sort of six can be the brain, but he's not just a six. He'll be out wide dribbling past players. Again, he's provided that freedom in a position where you wouldn't imagine he would do that. And you talk about Sarr, I think the greatest strength that you've seen with Sarr is intelligence, stamina, but also kind of filling in the gaps elsewhere. But Bissouma, in terms of his passing success, is 92%. Progressive passes, 8.9. Progressive carries, 3, which is, again, something you don't overly see in a 6. Pep Guardiola would talk about his 6s and say, Rodri needs to stay still a little bit more. Ange doesn't need to do that because they know they've got one hell of a player in Bissouma. And as long as he stays fit and Maddison stays fit, I think they're going to continue winning games.
Yeah, well, Ange talked about Bissouma in pre-season. He's one of the players he got to work with from the beginning. And he kind of instilled that confidence with him in terms of, you're going to be one of the main men. You need to be a leader. And apparently the next day he was late to training. And Ange was like, you can't do that again. But you're really seeing him be the player that they expect.
He's so press proof. I think that's the thing
but
for
you
me.
know what it is? Because of his low center of gravity, because he's you think about physicality when you think about Bissouma, but he's got the ability to drop the shoulder and go the other way really quickly, and so he can just do everything in the midfield. And I think there was a kind of this looming thing with players that teams signed from Brighton. Are they going to be as good out of that Brighton system? Bissouma has proved that he is one of the best centre midfielders in the Premier League.
I think the key with Bissouma is his mobility.
Yeah.
You can talk about what he does on the ball, which is brilliant. You can talk about how he fills spaces off the ball, but you can't do any of that without the mobility to get around the pitch. And it's just a stark contrast to what Tottenham had in the centre of midfield last season. And it begs the question, why wasn't Bissouma getting into the side?
It's amazing.
It's mad.
Yeah.
It's crazy that this guy has come in. And it's a testament to Ange Postecoglou's man management here as well. Because as you say, he's come in and found a player who's clearly talented, clearly got all the attributes to really be useful. But he's had to put his arm around him and bring him back up to the point where he believes that he can go out there and impact the team.
Yeah, and I think a different kind of composure as well. And I think a clue is his shorts. His shorts are never, like Rodri tucked in up, right? So he's going to do the right things at the right time. Bissouma, it's a different thing. He's so chilled.
Yeah, they're low.
I know that can lead to be like, okay, right, he's not going to do the work. But like you say, he has that mobility that it does feel like he's just playing, an 8-a-side game on 3G. And so if someone comes at me going, oh, okay, I'll go here. Or, what's the best way to create a goal? Well, as a 6, normally you would just go, well, let me just recycle. And he'll go, well, no, the space is there, so I'm off. So he has a sort of relaxed confidence that I think is really impressive as well.
Can I ask you a question? What happens when Bentancur comes back from injury?
Play them together.
Yeah.
Play them together. Spurs need strength in depth if they're going to go up to the next level. So to have a Sarr, to have a Bentancur, to have a Bissouma, that stands them in really good stead. There's different games where you need different tools, in my opinion. Somebody like Bissouma, we've talked about how effective he's been going forward as well, which is great. But he's not the type of player I would expect to unpick a lock, whereas Bentancur has that about him as well, a little bit more, in my opinion. So I think having that variety is going to be key to Spurs' progress.
I wouldn't bring him back in straight away, because I think the thing with him is that Bissouma's, he's the top dog. So Sarr works around him. If Bentancur comes in, he's going to be the guy who's going, okay, give the ball to me. So Bissouma has to play a little bit higher, or Bentancur has to learn to kind of get out the way at times. So I think it's a good problem, but it's a weird problem.
Do you not think, though, given what we've seen of Ange Postecoglou's style so far, that he will prioritise the ball player? And I think Bentancur is more a ball player. So do you think...
I slightly disagree, because I think you need energy, and I think he wants people in the box. And if you think about that goal against Man United, Sarr, who again, in terms of technical ability, you're not really seeing anything outrageous, but he's in the box at the right times. And that's what you would lose a little bit if Bissouma became that guy because you were trying to get Bentancur in. I think Bissouma is better than Bentancur.
Who's a better tempo setter, Bentancur or Bissouma?
Bissouma's just... the answer's always Bissouma.
Yeah, fair enough.